So we're rolling, rocking and rolling.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, so that's a cool story how, like, you know, kind of we crossed paths there as, like, you know, our client.
Yep.
And then Tyson reaching out and all that.
Yeah, Tyson's a great guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah,
he's
totally.
awesome. I met him when he was, you know, running for mayor at the time, and I was really impressed with his first of all was, you know, how well he spoke, but as far as like his website, and it was his platform, how he mapped out, you know, he went by department, and he had an actual plan.
Yeah.
You know, it's something like it's, you know, most politicians, you know, hey, what's your plan? It's like, well, when I get in there, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves. And it's like, okay, wow, what does that mean? Everybody says that.
Yep.
So I was really impressed that he had an actual written out plan.
Yeah.
Just that alone. And it was very organized, and it was very, he had a strategy. So that stuck out to me. And you know, it didn't work out for him, but, you know, I think he's got a lot of potential. So I'm glad to have him with us. And
no, it was good hanging out for a little bit with him.
yeah, absolutely. So Evan Watson. So where were you born?
I grew up in Bridgewater, Mass.
Bridgewater,
but,
okay.
Out in the rural area. Well, it's probably not so rural anymore, but
Yes.
you know, across the street there was just open fields and you know, cornfields with beehives and things.
Okay.
And out in the back was a pond where we would just run around in the woods. And,
So
and
you
all
had that.
kind of
You had
stuff.
that kind of like
Yeah.
environment around you. I had a
Yeah.
little bit of that too, so I can appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, and you know, you kind of would leave for the day, and then when it starts getting close to dinner time,
Yeah.
you know, your mother would call out to the woods, "I'm home," and you know, everybody would go back home. And what'd you do today?
My dad whistled. He had a lot. He had this like
Yep.
way of like whistling. You could hear it like 3 blocks away.
Well, it depended on which kid. You knew everybody's parent. One parent had a bell. One parent had a whistle.
Oh, that's
and
great.
My mom just kind of like yelled.
Yelled.
So, yep. Yeah. So it was good. I got to spend a lot of time outside and everything. So
Gotcha.
That was good.
So you said Bridgewater, right?
Yep.
So Bridgewater, and then you went to high school out there and all that.
Yeah, I went to Bridgewater, Rainham. Grew up, went through there, and then I ended up at UMass Dartmouth for college.
For college.
Yep, where I got a bachelor's in civil engineering.
Right. So now you're studying essentially what you're doing now for a career and a business.
Yep,
Which we'll get into all that. But where was like your, you know, initial spark to even go into engineering or civil or just anything like that?
Yeah. So my father was a machine operator in Local 4. He ran a Great All. And one summer, it was between junior and senior year, he talked to the survey on the site. They were working on the railroad that goes from like the Kingston line to Braintree, the commuter rail. And so I got an opportunity. I was 17 years old, and I was working on the railroad on a survey crew. And it was such a change from being like, you know, at school and really not knowing, you know, what the heck to do,
What's
what to
happening
say.
out there in the
Yeah.
world? Was that an unpaid internship?
No, I was
actually-
getting paid.
you getting
Yep.
paid?
Yep, exactly.
So you call like a rod man or
I was actually the instrument man.
Instrument man,
Yep,
okay.
Yep. So I stood behind the transit and
Yep.
you know, worked with them there. But it was great because I got to work with a lot of great people there and really kind of understood a little bit more. Everything isn't just the way it is in high school.
In high
you
school,
know,
right.
it's like, oh, I really like this, and it's
right.
It was almost like it was a world outside of what regular people do. You know, being in
of course.
construction. You know, where you get to see things when you go build something. First, you kind of have to take it all apart and break it all. So it's like you just smash that and break it all apart, and then you know, and then the other phase of the job, they're over there building it. So I got to see a lot of cool things, and I just thought this is great. You know,
Right. So you worked under like a land surveyor?
Yeah, so
essentially?
I was on a survey crew.
Survey crew.
I would just
Yeah.
meet at the job site, and we'd jump in the van, and
Yep.
depending on what the task was that day, we'd drive to the next rail crossing or whatever. And,
Gotcha.
Yep.
What is it true that I heard this, that like almost all land surveyors have Lyme disease?
Yes, I've been fortunate to not have Lyme disease, but it's pretty common out there.
Yeah.
It's brutal. I mean, it's hard to find surveyors, really, because of a lot of that. Because you need to be smart. You need to use like pretty sophisticated equipment. You need a degree.
Right.
So imagine being you graduate college, you go out, it's like, okay, you're on the survey crew.
Yeah.
Okay, what am I doing today? You're going to go stand in the swamp
Yeah,
in the middle
basically.
of July and locate these wetland flags. It's like,
This is not what. Yeah, I went to school for that, right?
Right.
I thought I'd be in the office with air conditioning, right?
Right. But some people like it. But
Right.
it's there are risks. Definitely Lyme disease being one of them. Or
Well, apparently I've had Lyme disease several times in my life. My doctor says because of my test, and it's probably the first time I got it was probably in the Cushnet sawmill.
Oh yeah.
Right. I guess that's what I get for riding on private property, right?
Yeah. But just to continue on your question there, when senior year in high school, you go to your guidance counselor and they, say, okay, well, here's the things that you tested good for and this and that. And I kind of had a choice. I said, well, I wanted to get into advertising actually.
Okay.
And because I was in the band and I like to write. And
Yep.
I remember opening the book and it said, okay, marketing, advertising. And there was a list. It said competitiveness, very high, job
Right.
availability, low.
Right.
Pay low. I'm like, all right. Well, they also said I'm pretty good at math and science, and I really liked the surveying experience that I got. So I kind of flipped to, all right, what's the deal with civil engineering? And it said, competitiveness low, job availability high, pay pretty decent. So I'm like, all right, I'll get into that.
Makes more sense. It was logical.
Yeah. And
Now, rewind. Stop for a second
yep.
there. So when you said you were in the band or a band, because when you say the is seems like it's related to school. When you say a band, it's like
a little bit of both.
It's like
So
you had your own garage band.
Yeah. So I played the saxophone in the marching band and the jazz band and all that type of stuff. And then I was actually in like a band, a garage type band with my friends and stuff. And that was fun. We played some shows. We played, which I think, is it called Shenanigans now down in Wareham? Which at the time.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
At the time, I think it was called the Crow's Nest.
Okay.
So we've had a couple shows, but then everybody at the end of high school went off to do different things, and we just kind of did our own stuff.
The Starving Artist, right? I was a DJ, producer in a hip hop group. So I actually, funny being in a hip hop group, I actually opened for a couple hardcore shows.
Oh, okay.
Which is like because we had like mutual friends. And
you must be around the same age as I don't know.
I'm 46.
Okay, me too. Yeah.
So like
back then, that was the scene.
You probably heard like of they're now a Wilhelm Scream, or it was formerly Smacking Isaiah like forever ago.
Okay.
But they were in the hardcore scene in New Bedford, and so we would open for them. So I can appreciate the artistic and like that.
There's a
musical
lot of engineers
side
that are musicians.
They're not all just dry and mathematicians, and they can be fun too. Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Some of them,
because you get the rep right of that. But that's cool. So you had some of that outlet going on too around that time. But you had to pick. So I had a similar crossroads when I was in going into college. I picked video and radio productions because I didn't have the musical background to get into Berklee College of Music.
Yep.
So I had to choose something close. But after doing it for about a year and a half, I was like, only jobs I could find were really going to be like in New York, and I didn't want to leave the area. So I changed my direction into actually civil and structural engineering.
Okay.
So I went a similar path as you.
Yeah.
But I had to go. I had to make that decision. Like, what's going to be the most rational, logical for my best interest financially in the future.
Exactly. That's a big one.
So it sounds like you made that choice.
Yeah.
Early.
And as far as with engineering, as you went into looking at structural engineering. So I went the more civil environmental route, but there's also, mechanical, chemical, all the different engineering
right
things there. And
fire protection engineering.
Yep.
Right.
And in high school, they had a robotics team, which was really awesome too. And they still have it there. It's called U.S. First Robotics, and it was invented by Dean Kamen, who's I don't know if you know those Segway scooters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he invented that.
The ones with the handle on it. Or
Yeah,
with
the one with the handle
the
and the
original
wheels.
ones.
Right. Exactly.
Right. A mall cop. I just think of mall cop when I see those.
Yep, exactly. Yep. But he also invented like the home dialysis pump and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
So his thing was to get, a team, essentially, to have that team environment for kids, but not necessarily be like sports-based, be more science-based.
Right.
So they came up with this whole program with robotics, and it's totally awesome. And my son, actually, he's in college at WPI, and he's still involved with it. But
it started around the time you were in school.
Yeah, when I was there, it was the second year they had it, when I was on the team.
Oh, that's great.
And,
I love it.
So I was like, oh, well, maybe I want to get into mechanical engineering, you know? But at the time, I was like, well, mechanical engineers, you know, they're going to build this, and they're going to build this little piece here and there. It's like, if you're a civil engineer, it's like you can drive down the road and be like, I built that. You know what I mean? Right. So that's
that bridge or that road or that whatever.
That was really
retention pond.
Yeah. But
hey, like, son, see that retention pond?
Yeah.
There's always the non-glamorous side to any job.
There's plenty of that, especially in civil engineering. You know, it's anytime I tell somebody, oh, I'm a civil engineer. Oh, wow, you design buildings. No, I don't design buildings. Oh, so bridges.
Right.
No, I don't design bridges. Then what do you do? I'm like, everything else.
Everything else in between.
Right.
What would be a bridge designer? Structural engineer, essentially?
Pretty much, yeah. Yep. Or transportation and structural. There's going to be a team of engineers.
That's like probably a little more specialized.
Yep.
A little bit small area. So now you kind of made that choice. So you made the choice based off of the curriculum was available at UMass Dartmouth.
Yeah, and I was accepted into Northeastern and UMass Dartmouth, and I applied to those two programs because they had the co-op program.
Okay.
So at Northeastern, they have like what they call trimesters. So it's like the summer is included as a semester, essentially. So once you finish your freshman year, and this is the way they did it at UMass at the time, was you finished your freshman year, and then over the summer you went to work, but at a approved company from the school. And then I went back for one semester, then I went to work, then school.
Oh,
so
wow.
it took 5 years to graduate, but when I came out, I had a full resume of 5 different places I worked.
So every year or semester, essentially, you were with a different company?
I worked at the same company for a couple semesters. I worked at Perimeter Land Services, where, doing land surveying.
Right.
I actually worked down the street here at the sewage treatment plant at Fort Tabor there.
So that would have been what, for the city of New Bedford?
That was for a private company.
Private
and
company.
We were, again, sounds highly glamorous, but we were researching a anaerobic sludge digester.
Oh, perfect.
So my job was to go into the basement of the sludge building and open up a valve where the sludge would fill up a bucket, and then we would sift that out and get it all ready to put into the machine. And then we would monitor the machine and take everything out, and then we'd go to the laboratory and do the laboratory testing and all that type of thing. So I learned a lot, because it was a lot of you're kind of on your own doing your own thing. And
a lot of science with that too.
Yeah, exactly. So that was interesting.
So you interned and all that.
And then I worked for O'Connor Constructors. They were out of Canton. And that was neat, because I got to work on the Reebok World Headquarters. And then we worked on the New Balance building over there in Alston, Brighton.
Right.
So that was a little more survey. And then I got to work on the Big Dig a little bit too, which was great, doing some land survey.
Because that project lasted like
forever,
20 years or something.
Yeah,
it was like
yeah.
Longest construction project in history or something.
Yep. But I was up there mostly on weekends, and my job was on the Southeast Expressway, there was that big yellow gantry crane that was there. And so we had to as-built the anchor bolts. So they would pour the pier, and there was the anchor bolts there, and we needed to measure them to make sure they were right before they put the pieces on.
Right.
But in order to do that, you had to walk across the gantry crane, walk down this 18-inch wide ladder, and then stand on top of this 8-foot diameter pier that was about 130 feet off of the ground.
Oh, boy. You definitely had a harness on for sure with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it today. That was just, being 19 years old and
no kids. Yeah.
whatever. You know,
Not-
okay, you
not as
want
much
me to
to
go over there?
lose.
Fine, I'll go do it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's great about, like, public construction projects and, the scale. It's just something you don't, it's very
unreal.
rare you see that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So you did, so that was still during your internship? Oh, not internship, but during your like
During my
college years,
yeah.
right?
What's great is like my daughter now, she goes to Quinnipiac and she has an internship. I'm like, well, how much are they paying you? She's like, well, no, we don't get paid. I'm
Right.
like, what are you talking about? You don't get paid. And so, but in engineering, usually the internships are paid, And
Right.
they actually pay pretty good,
Yeah, I remember when I was doing my internship, because my father had a relationship with the architect I ended up interning with. I don't know if it's because of that or I was paid. I had a little bit of experience on my own, kind of. It wasn't completely green, but it was paid. I remember I had an internship class, and I would go back and report weekly. And I remember when I first told the teacher in the class that I was getting paid, because nobody in the class was being paid for their internships. So everyone was like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, well, my family knows the architect, and they were like, "Oh, of course," And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, sorry, not sorry."
Yeah,
It was a great experience.
Yep.
Great experience to kind of learn what to do and what not to do. Working for especially a small business owner, it definitely opened my eyes to some things I would avoid if I ever went on my own at that point in time.
Yep.
But when you were in your, I'm sure you have a road to where you got to today as being an owner of an engineering firm.
Yep.
But how long have you been in business versus like how many years did you work for other firms?
So actually right out of college, so it was a little interesting. I graduated college June 2nd, and I got married June 9th. And then by January 1st, we had our first baby, so we just jumped right into it, So, after I got married, I was like, I need a job, So I went to work for Prime Engineering at Lakeville. And
Prime,
like
yep.
you said, it's like learning what to do and what not to do. One of the companies I worked for during my internship was a union land surveying job up at the power plant up in Everett when they were expanding that.
Right.
And I remember talking to some of the guys that were like, you're good at doing this. Like you could come work here right now and be making 80 to 100 grand. And
Right.
but then again, they would also talk about how this guy they know who's 40 something years old had a stroke. This other guy, he's 38 years old. He's a grandfather already. And, this other guy, his face is blowing up because he hasn't seen a dentist in 5 years. And I'm like...
And that was reflective of what? Not like just overworked because they're
just
business
the
owners?
work-life balance.
Right.
Yeah, they weren't business
Yeah.
owners, but they were just...
they were just like senior engineers or
they were
surveyors or whatever.
yeah, working in the union.
Yeah.
And so, the money was great, but, working 12 hours a day in Boston that, was going to take a toll. And I'm like, well, I have a family now, and, I want to be able to be around for them and everything.
Right.
So taking the job in Lakeville was a little bit better.
Better, right.
Yeah, work
Because you're close by.
Right.
At that point in time, you were living in Bridgewater still?
No, we lived in Taunton. Our first house we bought in Taunton. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so that's close. That's fairly close.
Yeah, it's right there. So
Yeah, I've done business with Prime over the years at different occasions. Not really much now, but
Yep.
I'm familiar with that firm. I actually, just to stop you for a second, but when I was in college, like I said, I took civil structural engineering because that's what was offered. It was a combo kind of core. It was through Bristol Community College.
Yep.
So, and through that, I actually gained an internship working for a land surveyor by the name of John Libby. I don't know if you ever heard that.
I know
So
John.
Libby, anytime I mention that name in this area, most people know him because at that point in time, back then, he was already pretty much semi-retired. And so I did some survey projects with him, and I got to learn how to do mortgage inspection plans, and I got to get it was great. I got exposed to that side of the industry. That's not necessarily where I was going, but it's where I could get an internship, and I knew how to use CAD, so I was useful to him.
No, and I think that's really useful too, as an engineer, to get experience on the survey side too, because most of the time as an engineer, when you're going to design a project, you receive a plan from the surveyor,
Right.
And you're like, if you don't know, how they got that information, you might misinterpret some of what's on there. And then same thing when you draw a plan, if you don't draw it the way that is going to be interpretable by the surveyor, they're going to have a tough time laying it out. Now it's not so much drawing, it's all in CAD and everything.
It's all in CAD, right.
But still, even that, there's certain ways to draw things in CAD that are going to make it easier for the end user.
Right. So you were over at Prime after I guess essentially when you graduated.
Yeah, and I was there until 2020. So I was there for 18 years. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. Yep. So that's probably where I heard your name too, because I was doing business with them probably definitely around 2015 back then. So we probably maybe we answered a phone call or two. Me like,
yep.
Where's this at? Where's that at? Such a common thing in our industry. It's like it's just like I feel like between not just only the craftsmen in the field, like tradespeople, it's also the engineering and architecture side. There's just there's a lack of people in these industries.
There are, yeah.
Are you seeing the same?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, just to not to talk all about surveying, but I think I saw somewhere land surveyors were the hardest position to source by headhunters in the country. And the average age is like 50-something years old. And I was telling the same story to one of my clients last night at a hearing, and he said, same for all the trades.
Right.
He goes, electricians, any of your like master trades, they're all like in their 50s. It's tough getting young people to
carpenters,
come
all
on
that. Yeah, we find the same thing. I just hired a carpenter recently, last week actually. He's 59. Very experienced guy, but I don't have the 20-year-olds knocking my door. And I have like the 19, like just like kind of like they're looking for a foot in the door somewhere. But it's like if you don't have the team in place to farm them and groom them, it's like
I
can't hire just a 19-year-old kid out of high school that's had wood shop or even carpentry through Voc. You're gonna have there might be like an all-star, but you got to have the culture, the company culture, to raise them up.
Right, because if everybody on your team is like a senior master craftsman, and then you hire a bunch of 20-year-olds that want to learn, they might be eager. You really need somebody like in between that's somebody that they can look up to.
That's true.
And learn.
And you can even get guys that are just very experienced and they're just kind of like OGs, but they're just not good at being leaders. They're good craftsmen. Especially in my side of the field. Maybe the same applies there too. They may be a great surveyor, a great engineer, but they're not really personable. They're not good at like it. I think being a mentor and a teacher is just a whole separate craft in itself.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a culture difference too between somebody that grew up in the 80s versus somebody that grew up in the 2000s.
True.
It's like you put those two people in the same room, and sometimes you're like, you can't say that. What are you doing? So it's tough for people to get along.
Can't call him bro.
Yeah, right. Stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. So
I had my first employee still with me. When he first started working for me, I always joke about this. He used to call me kid, but he was like, he's like 7 years younger than me. Yeah. And he kept doing it it was like a week went by, and I was just like, we were working side by side. I'm like, hey, I was like, listen, you probably shouldn't call somebody older than you kid. I was like, it's kind of weird. And I was like, it's just, I don't really like it. Let's just stop that. And then he was like, all right.
It's better than being called son. I used to have a client that called me son all the time. It drove me crazy.
I also have on the other dynamic of it, I don't like when people call me boss. I don't know why it bothers me, even though some people probably love it, like, oh, I'm a boss. But like, I'm just like, don't call me boss. Just
exactly.
Call me bro.
Bro's better.
We're on the same level when we're bro.
Perfect.
So where were we? We were a bit talking about at Prime. You were there for 18 years. So there you must have like really got a lot of experience in those 18 years.
Yeah, because again, it's a small firm, and we did a lot. So we had land survey, we had engineering, and we also had licensed site professionals, so like environmental cleanup work.
Oh, okay.
So
actually performing the work or overseeing the work?
Overseeing the work. It was like analyzing the site, figuring out the nature and extent of the contamination, then coming up with a plan for remediation and going through all that.
So would a company, like I remember the name Frank Corp. I don't know if they're still around anymore. I don't think so. Or at least I don't hear that name anymore.
I've been out of the environmental stuff for a little while, so
they were out of New Bedford, like by the Kings Highway.
We used to use Frank Corp a lot.
I think they actually like did the work. They had like equipment and they did the remediation work. So they, like a company like that or a remediation company would follow like your plan essentially.
Exactly. So once it got to our level, it was all, part of the MCP, the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, which not to get too much into the
no, you can get. That's what the show's all about. Yeah, this is.
So it was the LSP program. Back in the day, the DEP was in charge of environmental cleanup.
Right.
So government agency doing what government agencies do. It was slow.
Right. So for those that don't know, DEP is Department of Environmental Protection, right?
Yeah, thank you.
And then there was the other, what was the other acronym?
Well, there was the DEQ before that, the Department of Environmental Quality. And then that morphed into the DEP.
So they oversee all that,
Right. And so what they realized is that if we want to have these things cleaned up, we should probably break it out into a more private sector. So they started the LSP program, licensed site professional. And basically that person is in charge and more or less just reports everything back to DEP.
Right.
And they kind of check on it and, audit things occasionally.
Right.
So,
so you spent some chapters of your book of your book of life at Prime in that area.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And again, when you're at a small firm, it's like you got to do everything, So it's like you said, either
proposals,
answering the phone, proposals, or, then doing a septic design, doing perk tests, or out on the survey crew, or digging test pits for environment, drilling, monitoring wells.
Right.
And then on the other side, you're going to public hearings at night and presenting projects and dealing with the butters.
I definitely wanted to talk to you about like that whole thing. That's a whole different like ball game.
Yes, it is. Yep.
We just went to one 2 nights ago. We represent our clients occasionally. And so very interesting. It's like, I'd love to hear about your take on some of those meetings and maybe some of your funniest ones or more difficult ones. But so you touched on some of that, the design work as well.
Yeah. And so by the time, when 2020 rolled around and we were, talking about different ways that the company was going to go with, who was going to run it and this and that. It just kind of didn't work out with, the way, which happens sometimes. So, and then it was in the middle of COVID where everybody was working from home and everything else. I was like, I think this is a good time. It didn't, there was nothing that I always aspired to be,
to stay there.
Business. No, to be in business by myself.
By yourself.
It wasn't anything like that. But there were just a lot of signs that came to me, One of them was interesting. So I talked about I worked at Perimeter Land Services, which is the survey company. And a guy that worked there, his name is Rick Reed, and he started a survey firm. Lighthouse Land Surveying.
Okay.
And so as I was kind of vacillating what I was going to do, I went over to him. I said, hey, you don't have any engineers over here. Like, maybe we could work something out and this and that. And he was like, no, you don't want to work for me. You want to work for yourself. I'm like, I can't do that. No, What are you talking about? No way. He goes, do you have $500 in a credit card? I'm like, yeah. He goes, $500 opens your LLC, buy a computer with your credit card.
Right.
And you're in business. I'm like, but I don't have an office space. He goes, I'll rent you the office space upstairs. I'm like, well, I was almost
a good friend to have right there.
Yeah,
I see how this is unfolding.
Yeah,
That's great.
I was holding myself back, and then at one point I was like, wait a minute, I got all these things yelling at me like, you should do this. I was like, maybe I should just listen and do it. So I did in 2020 in June. Took the plunge, had my own little office space upstairs from Lighthouse Land Surveying.
Right.
We had a good relationship. He has since sold Lighthouse, so he's with GM2, and they don't really work in my sector anymore, in like the land development type stuff. They do mostly infrastructure work.
Right.
So I work with other people now, but I'm still there in the same spot.
Same spot.
And it's,
and you're at 5 years. That's like a milestone, essentially.
I can't
You're entering
believe
your
it.
5th year, or but that's great.
Yeah, I can't believe
Congratulations.
It's been 5 years. Yep.
Yeah. That's the 5-year mark that really shows. They say 2 years, but 5 is like for real.
Yeah, exactly.
Your friend that you collaborate with, what was his name?
Rick.
It's Rick.
Yep.
So yeah, Rick definitely nudged you the right direction for sure.
Yes.
It's good.
Yeah.
That's
That was the final
I
straw.
love friends
And
like
it was
that.
like, yeah, the office is 8 miles away from my house,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, if I need to go here, I come back, or what. It was just made that a little bit easier, and it was in a different, geographical area. Most of the work we did at Prime was like on the South Coast,
Right.
So, I was like, well, when you leave somewhere that you've been for such a long time, it's like I just want to like kind of be in a little different zone. So,
Different zone too.
Yep.
So
now,
you got a whole new essentially, it's not like you left Prime and took all your contacts with you.
I didn't tell anybody.
You just kind of just went. You just started fresh.
I gave them I said, well, this phone number, that's a Prime Engineering phone number. So I gave them the cell phone, and I didn't tell any clients. I actually told one client because I was working with them. And then they said, oh, well, all right, I'll call you next week. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, that's up to me. I'm like, okay. So I wasn't looking to steal any clients or anything. And,
Right.
And then before you know it, I had a pretty good portfolio of really good clients that appreciate what I do, and they know what they're doing, and I think they tell me I know what I'm doing. So.
Right. So would you say, and this is the stuff I like to really drill down into, is because at the end of the day, I love construction, I love design, I love all of this, but we're business owners. So, there's the entrepreneurial side to it, and how, you can say you want to do this, but you have to have clients, you have to have the revenue coming in to stay relevant and even be open.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have how I kind of started my story, but when Rick, right?
Yep.
When Rick kind of encouraged you, because he was a surveyor, did he kind of also have hey, I can kick you work too at the same time?
We did. We worked together that way. So I would kick him work, and he would kick me work.
Back and forth.
I would give him a discount on my side, and he'd give me a discount on his side, so we could kind of make money off of each other.
Synergy, with each other, right?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I love that word. I love that word.
Yep. No, it was good. It was good. It's they like I said, they kind of moved on, but now I work with a couple other surveyors. I've been.
But you had your foothold at that point. It's like you had your foothold with other people, and
exactly.
So similarly with me, I worked for an architect, but then I wasn't really getting anywhere as far as I wasn't getting the pay I needed. At that point in time, there was one-man operation. It just couldn't.
Yep.
So I had to move on. I went to lumber sales. And while I was doing lumber sales, when I was doing inside sales, I started noticing contractors needed plans. They would come in the lumber yard. So I started a side business, drawing plans for contractors. And then that kind of started to grow. But then the recession came, and that was my opportunity that I jumped from there to starting the design business from my home, from there. And then I hired my first employee, which I still have, is still with us today, 15 years later. So I really respect that taking the step and identifying that there's an opportunity here. I need to at least try it.
Yeah,
not
and that was the thing too.
It.
During the whole COVID thing, it was tough to get somebody on the phone, and so
I bet.
I would have people calling me like, "Oh, I called this place, I called that place, and nobody's at their office."
So you capitalized on it? Is that what you're saying?
Come over to my office.
Perfect.
Let's take a look at your project.
It's so big. I talk about this all the time, just with myself and my employees. Getting back to people within 24 hours. I don't care if you don't have the answer in the email. If it's a more involved response, just respond and say, "I've got your email. I'm working on an actual response."
Yep.
It's big. And look at you. You capitalize on people either taking time to goof off at home under the cover of COVID, or maybe didn't want to work or afraid or just whatever the legitimate or non-legitimate reasons, you took that opportunity. And I remember saying to myself during the recession that if I'm busy now, I'm going to be doing well when we get out of it.
Right.
So that's great. That's great to see how you kind of launched that.
Yeah.
And you're at that location now?
I'm still at that location. Yeah.
Is it Taunton?
in Taunton on Jefferson Street, and I did have a few interns throughout the way. Every once in a while, an intern would knock on my door, and I wasn't actively seeking anybody out, but I'm like, okay, well, you want to obviously learn this and work here, so sure, okay, come on board. I did have an employee for a little while, but she moved on because she is looking to start a family and all that kind of stuff, and wanted to be at like
a stay-at-home type of thing.
Yeah, she had the opportunity to work from home and have a little more like healthcare benefits and all that other kind of stuff. She was actually a landscape architect.
Okay.
So it was good because she wasn't an engineer, but she was very good at like AutoCAD and seeing how things work and and putting together.
So I did the process, the prospective intern employee kind of scenario, and what I find is I don't do it as much anymore. It's got to be the right fit, because what I found myself doing is taking an intern like for a summer, and then like we really would slow down our production to show them a lot, but then they're gone in September. And then we never hear from them again. Yeah. So I would keep reinvesting into these interns that there's no return on investment, essentially.
It's tough for a small company to have interns. Yeah.
Now, I did have some successful ones. Chris Lever, he worked for us for a while. He works for T3 now. But he was an intern for us for like 10 months before he became a paid. And it was 10 months because he was working part-time somewhere else. Yep. So he wasn't really full-time as an intern. Sure. But he eventually, became a full-time employee for I think like 7 years. Oh, great. So that was great. He was a great guy. Yeah. He moved on. I'm not a licensed architect. I'm a licensed builder. We're a design build firm. But our focus is primarily construction, but he wanted to get his architect's license. So that's really the only reason he moved on. He wasn't going to be able to get that under me. Yeah. Right. And we're still friends to this day, and it's great. And we have a fantasy football league every year, a fantasy draft every year at the office, and he always comes by, and he's a great friend of ours. It's like family. But I've had a couple of the interns too, but I'm really picky about it, because I'm like, okay, well, where are you going to be at this point in time? Like, if I'm going to invest in you, I want you to become, part of our family eventually. Yep, exactly. Even if it's for a couple years.
Yeah, I had one intern. She was, I think she was a freshman. She was, so well, what do you like about engineering? She's like, I don't know. My mom told me I should do it. Those kind of things. I'm like, well, I got nobody else, so you're hired.
You're hired, right.
But then after that, she was like, I'm not going to come back. I'm going to look into structural or a different type of enshering. So
because that's another part of it too. Like, especially with the young interns that are in college, like they may not even be sure if this is even the field they want to be in, let alone even if they do stay in the field, if their journey is going to keep them on a path with you as part of it. So
and some of that might have been my fault. I wanted to make sure, I'm like, this person really doesn't know what this is all about. So if I went out to a construction site, I'm like, come on with me, and it's like, I made sure she was with all like the crew, like installing the manhole, the sewer tie-in or whatever. I'm like, this is what we do,
This is what we do. Is this like really what you kind of want to be around? Right, essentially. Right. You don't have to do the actual work, but you're part of it.
Right. And you got to know how to interface with like a lot of different kind of people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I love giving young people opportunities. I've mentored people. I've part of a nonprofit that gives back to the youth. I'm all about it. But at the end of the day, I can't hurt my business. Right. Exactly. I don't mind hurting it a little bit to help people, but I'm not going to affect it, where, just so many great young people have reached out. It's just not the right fit. So right now we have an intern now. It's actually my youngest son, Logan. Yeah. So he worked in the field with our carpenters for a couple of years. He graduated high school last year. And so he's coming back in the office, but it's unpaid. So he's my own son. It's an unpaid internship for 3 to 6 months, depending on how much time you dedicate to it. But in my eyes and with him, what he's told me, like my oldest son, Christian, is that who is involved in the business as an employee, is that he wants to be part of the business also.
Yeah.
So he's committed to the family business essentially.
No, and same thing. That's a great opportunity for him to be working with like the carpenters and the builders and things. Because
you learned a lot. Yeah.
As a designer, same thing. You want to understand that if I design something a certain way, that somebody's actually going to be able to construct it at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, because that's the goal, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day, is to actually have something that was built.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I come from. I was a carpenter, I was a laborer. I mean, I was a laborer longer than I was a carpenter, so I definitely know the hands-on work. And, you know, it's really awkward when you see some architects or engineers or, you know, people on the design side. Some people call them the suits that don't understand the realistic impacts on the real world. So I think it's important to have those both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I've never constructed anything per se, but you know, I do like to spend time with the guys that are doing the work.
Right.
And I'll ask them too, like when they call, hey, this is all set. It's time for you to come and do the as-built or the final inspection. I'll ask them too. It's like, okay, how did everything go?
How did everything go, right?
Was anything confusing on my design plan, or was there something on there that didn't make sense to you, or you know, those kind of things. So I always try to like learn from those guys what it is that they're looking for, so that at the end of the day, when they get a design plan with my name on it, they know it's going to be, you know, I can build it to this plan versus I have to make something up on the fly to get it to work.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel like sometimes I pander to the builders a lot because that's where my heart is, you know, but my heart is also in design. And when I say that, you know, we need to understand the field conditions and the real world, I also feel that the builders need to understand the design side, the engineering side, because, you know, there's also the guy out there that's like, oh, I'm gonna frame this house with, I don't know, 2x8 floor joists because that's what I did on the last 3 jobs. It's like, well, the last 3 jobs were different. You can't apply that methodology to every job going forward now. You can't use the same header that you used on the job a year ago.
Right, and here you are as the designer, you spend all this time and effort making it this way for a reason.
Correct.
You know, I always have a joke, I think it's the movie Reservoir Dogs, and Jim Belushi, he's going off and he goes, so you mean to tell me that this man decides out of the blue just to go off and do this stuff? So
yeah, you think of that, yeah.
Right, so sometimes it's like, okay, so I spent a year designing this, 6 months permitting it, and then we got all the funding and everything, and then you just decide out of the blue that you're going to lower the foundation by a foot.
Or you're going to add a foot to it. And now I'm going to go do that. I mean, I don't know if you ever run into that, but, you know, I've run into things like that. You know, we just, you know, even my own guys, like, you know, I've come up to a job and seen like some millwork detail that they wasn't spelled out in the plans. And I'm like, where did you come up with this from? It's like, well, you know, and they don't know what to say. I'm like, you just thought it looked nice, right? And it's like, well, if there wasn't information about that,
call me.
You should have called somebody and just stopped. And because it's worse for you to go forward. And luckily in that particular instance it worked out, but there's been instances that it hasn't worked out. And I'm like, you know, I'm very like militant when it comes to stick to the script, right? You follow the plan. If there's no plan, I like to revert a lot of what we do back to the military. I don't have military experience, but like, you know, you're not going to just, you know, attack from the left flank if that wasn't discussed, you know, from a commanding level, like it's like people can die.
Yep.
So
yeah, exactly. So anytime I work with a new contractor, you know, because a lot of times you work for the client, the homeowner or whatnot, and then you're giving them plans, and then they go out and select their own contractors. And if it's somebody I haven't worked with before, I tell them right when they first call, it's like, look, if there's any question at all, feel free to give me a call at any time. And those are the people that I always pick up the phone for, is like the guys that are out working on the job that's like, I'm standing here in the cold looking at this hole and I'm trying to figure it out. And it's like, I need an answer now.
And you could probably attest to this, that there's probably been something in your career that you designed that either was, I don't want to say maybe a potential mistake or an oversight, or it wasn't factored in, and a builder may have called you and And because that builder called you, you had an opportunity to make a correction before it became a problem. Whereas if he didn't and he proceeded or made an assumption, it would have been a whole world of problems.
And then everybody's standing here like this.
Right.
Yep.
So I love the collaborative approach.
Yeah,
you know,
working together is
that's
important.
huge.
Yep.
Yeah, like just pick up the phone and call somebody. It doesn't have to be a problem. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. So so what kind of stuff you working on now?
Right now, I have a couple residential subdivisions going on, which that market's still pretty hot.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yep. And I have.
I mean, you're working on them doesn't mean they're approved, right?
Well, I have a couple approved subdivisions. Like actually, one of the first projects that I started on when I opened, I did I think it was a 17-lot subdivision in Brockton. And then I did some collaboration with another engineering firm, J.K. Holmgren out of Brockton. And so we did another, I think there's like 24 lots there, and that's under construction. I have a big project that I've been working on with Long Built Homes since 2020.
Oh, I just saw Bob this morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy, certainly. And that project actually was one of the first projects I worked on at Prime in 2004, maybe. And like you said, when the big crash happened, that it kind of stopped.
Right.
And it went through different layers of ownership, and then finally Long Built picked it up. But things changed, the regulations changed, everything changes, and we had to kind of redesign it. Finally got everything approved, and now they're blasting away doing houses. So
Gotcha.
So that's great.
That's good to see because I mean, like one of my next guests I have coming up is Josh Amaral from the housing development in New Bedford, and we talk about zoning a lot and how zoning is so restrictive that it's the Northeast is just infamous for not having buildable land and having a necessity for it. Do you face a lot of challenges when it comes? I already know the answer. You do, but how challenging is it for you working with getting projects approved for new construction, or you do multifamily or anything like that?
A little bit of multifamily, mostly single family, and I've done a few. Last night actually just got approved a warehouse expansion in the industrial park. And,
okay.
And then. What else? I did a multifamily Frank's Good Time Lounge in Taunton.
Okay.
They're gonna renovate that.
Yep.
With add some more housing units upstairs and that. So that'll be pretty good.
Perfect.
But to your point, it's anything can be engineered. You can design anything to make anything happen. Really, when you think about it. I mean,
on paper.
I just watched yesterday a 30-story rocket ship fall out of the sky and get caught by
Elon Musk,
right. So
landing a rocket,
being
amazing.
Caught by, so if you could do that, anything could be engineered,
right.
But it's not like a 3-dimensional problem. It's like a 15-dimensional problem when you're designing these things,
right?
You want to design something that's safe and that's going to work, which is the main. That's the prime directive really, is to make sure it's safe.
Right.
Then number 2 is you got to meet the zoning regulations. Then there's a lot of environmental regulations. There's the Wetland Protection Act. There's your stormwater regulations. There's
that's a bad word. Stormwater.
Stormwater has been
becoming very problematic for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's going further and further. The closer you get to the city, it seems like the more rules they have, like as you get closer to Boston.
Oh boy.
And a lot of it is, Rich, the owner of Prime, used to say we're paying penance for the sins of our past, So
yeah, it's true.
Back before we had any rules, you would just, we're going to fill in the harbor and build a bunch of buildings on it.
Right.
And, we'll take this river and put it in a pipe and reroute it over there and put the building here where the river used to be. And lo and behold, that causes problems.
Right. And we're paying for it now.
Right. So
with extensive regulations.
Well, that's what it is. So now to correct that, you enact some regulations to try and fix that. But sometimes they get a little spicy, with the
I think what I find is that it's all good intentions, right? But like from the street level, like you and I and our clients and the consumer, but from a political level, regulatory wise, I feel like it's a business maneuver from insurance companies, right? So it's like you're kind of like protecting your assets essentially, especially with building code. I haven't really thought about how it applies through like environmental or stormwater and things like that. But on a construction side, as a builder, we know that it's a fact that insurance companies pay lobbyists in Boston to push for more stringent building codes, which just protects their dollar essentially. And it's hidden under the umbrella of public safety. Like it's the fear. It's like, oh, we're pushing for public safety.
Yeah, a lot of the
you
stuff
are,
with
but it's really in disguise.
Yeah. Like especially, well, I don't get too much into the. I always tell people, like, if you look at one of my plans, the building is a rectangle, or it's a blank box and
an envelope, right?
Yeah, on everything else outside of that. But you hear about it all the time between like the stretch code or if you're within. I forget how many miles of the coast you have to meet the new like wind regulation of hurricane rear windows, and tie down and everything.
But think about it like this, right? And you can agree with it because this is something that actually is in your industry. Every road has to have, can't be a dead end, has to have a hammerhead or something or a turnaround at the end of it for a fire truck, right?
Yep.
Now, again, it's for public safety, but at the end of the day, the insurance companies are really pushing for that because they want that fire truck to that house as fast as possible to, mitigate damage. There's and I know it's kind of a sinister like viewpoint I have on it, but at the end of the day, there's it's a kind of like there's like a selfish intention behind it when those people, because we don't have many people lobbying for us on the state level,
right?
So we have way more of that, and they just keep piling regulations on top of regulations. And what I find is that
regulations only grow; they don't go away.
They don't go away, but they kind of do a little bit though, because for instance, remember there used to be like the lead renovators, kind of like initiative, and you had to have a certificate to work on renovation projects prior to 1978. Well, where is that now? It's almost like they had that in place. You can create regulations, but you have to administer them. And then you have these building town halls that have like a Board of Health, and they have one or two officials working in it. There's no way for them to review plans, go out, do inspections, confirm that all these regulations are being met. So what eventually happens, they put more regulations on or new ones, and they start to focus on those, and the other ones kind of like fade off into the distance.
Yeah, in my fields, a lot of the stuff is so complex that the people at the town can't understand it. So, you show up and, they can understand, okay, we're going to put this building here. We're going to have a parking lot. Here's our access and things. And then you say, okay, well, and here's what we're going to do for our stormwater. And they're like, I don't know. And the stormwater report is,
crazy,
2.5 inches thick, and
it's
all that. And so, well, we don't know how to read that, so we're going to hire an outside consultant.
So now you're going back and forth with that entity,
which is
essentially.
Always, which is fine. That's part of the biz. What's been aggravating recently is, my fee to submit a permit, let's say it's something relatively simple and it's like a $5,000 small design and a permit application. And then the town or the city sends it out to get reviewed, and their fee is $10,000. Like, wait a minute.
Wait a second, right?
Yeah. Like even at $300 an hour.
I'm the quarterback of this thing, and I'm getting paid half.
Right.
And not even that. The consumer's paying triple now, essentially.
Right.
You're not going to pay that fee.
Right. So there's a lot of like when people talk about the price of housing and the price of everything. There's a lot of things that people don't realize.
I rolled into that price.
Right.
Like especially now, when we even price a renovation, we include hazardous material inspection, which is being required, for projects that are going to disturb or have demolition, and over a certain amount of square feet. And then sometimes the client's like, "Why is this in here?" It's like, the other bid we got didn't have that, and it's like, well, we know it's going to be required. So we're just kind of trying to forecast it.
Right.
So yeah, we're a little more expensive than the other guy, but it's because we're putting that in there. We can take it out if you want, but you're going to get a change order later for it. So when we go to pull your permit, Yeah, it's like the regulatory thing is definitely it's a frustration. Everyone always means well, you know. It's like, you know, we go to these boards, and we were at one the other night. We were trying to get approval for an addition. So this is interesting. I'm going to explain this to you. So it's one lot, has two separate houses on it, already existing since like late 1800s, early 1900s. Both have utilities, water, sewer, going to both. So both separate, distinct with separate addresses, but on one lot.
Okay.
So they want to put they want to put an addition on it. So the Board of Appeals is basically, well, this, you know, it's an ADU. Part of the argument was like, oh, it's an ADU. It's like, well, no, it's not an ADU. It's an existing non-conforming structure. And, you know, long story short, the meeting got continued about 3 times. And finally got approved because, you know, it just took a while for everyone to kind of get their head around what was there. But what the general feeling we get from these boards is that they just very afraid to set precedents, you know, or make you know, do anything out of the ordinary. And that's what a lot of Board of Appeals are for. It's to kind of like look at unique scenarios and kind of help move them along.
Yeah, I see that the Board of Appeals more than anything, right? Because, you know, you essentially have the boards that I go to, so you don't really go to the Board of Health that often. Usually that's dealt with the agent or
directly.
Whatnot. Yeah. You have the Conservation Commission.
Conservation, right.
You have the Planning Board.
Right.
And then you have the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then sometimes you have like if it's a city, you have to see the Municipal Council.
Okay.
And so typically at the Planning Board, like for a subdivision, you can do things by right. So if you meet all the requirements and you go to them and say, here's my project, it meets all your requirements, they basically have to say yes. They can put conditions on it to make it safer or make it fit in the community better. But if you have a special permit at the Planning Board, if it's not special enough, they could say no. You know, and there's really no recourse other than you just told this guy that he could have it, and I'm asking for the same thing. And so when you sit in front of a judge, then they can say yes. So that's where they're
very careful because they don't want to do that. They want to make sure that they didn't already approve something previously, or they're going to approve this now, and that's going to be the new precedence that someone down the road could say, well, you approved that one.
Yeah, or a lot of times they get, you know, by having 3 meetings and having it continued, you're taking in enough evidence during that process to say, no, this one project was allowed based on the unique merits of that one project.
Right.
And your project has nothing to do with it.
Has nothing to do with it.
Yep.
That's part of what you do is like you're an engineer, you're engineering plans, you're designing, you have the fieldwork experience, but then there's like, at the end of the day, it's a litigation. It's almost like you're an attorney.
Yeah, that's funny because I would always tell like the young engineers that I would work with, I said, you know, nobody, you know, okay, welcome to the real world. You know, nobody in engineering school told you that you had to be an attorney or a public speaker, or a construction worker.
True, public speaking too, right?
Yep. Or a therapist to your client. You know, that's probably another big one. You know, There's you know, nobody really knows what they're going through other than you. You know, so like if they're freaking out on something, they'll just call sometimes, and it's like,
yeah, absolutely,
I'm freaking out, you know, and you just
it's part of the game, and you know, I think you know, I'm hoping that New England as a whole, not just Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but I hope zoning. I'm seeing some light at the end of the tunnel with zoning reform. I'm a big advocate for zoning reform, especially in like already like dense areas. Leave the rural areas alone. But I'm hoping with this call for housing crisis. Rhode Island calls it a housing crisis. I agree with that as well. I'm hopeful that there's going to be some light on some lax on some of the zoning regulations to maybe allow for some more development. That's all.
Yeah, a good example of that. I remember we had a couple projects at Prime in Mansfield, and downtown Mansfield, they've really like built it up. It's totally different than it used to be, but they have, you know, the T that runs right through there. And what they were allowing is you could go up to a 5-story building with residential housing, and then the first floor would be retail.
Right.
So
actually, Quincy just passed that. I think not Quincy. What's on the backside of Boston? On Back Bay, like across the water. Is it?
Hull?
No, Cambridge. Is it Cambridge?
Yeah.
Cambridge, I believe it is. They, I think it was a couple weeks back. I saw an article. It was like they approved 5 stories in the whole town by right.
Oh, wow.
So there's across the board. So you can do 5 stories across the board by right now.
And the other great thing they did there too is, parking is always an issue. So, some of the new stuff they came out with the new housing development plan, it's like, okay, you can do an ADU, and if it's so close to the T, then you don't need any parking.
Any parking, right?
I'm like, well, how's that going to work?
I think that's part of the MBTA Act, which there's going to be, that's some of the light I'm talking about, where like MBTA, if you have a train stop, I think within a certain radius from that train stop, you'll be able to have laxed zoning, so you can create mixed use and higher rise construction.
Well, what they did there is they even allowed you, you have a parking spot in just one parking, but if you think about it, if you have 2 people living in one apartment,
which is very, very doable.
Right. They'd allow you to double stack the parking.
Oh, tandem.
Yeah. So you could have like unit 15 would have these parking spaces.
Right.
And it's like, hey, I'm going to the store. Can you move your car? Okay. Back out. And
you got to do that thing. Right.
Right. Because that's probably the hardest thing, is getting the parking to fit for a lot of these places,
Right. Because we in New England generally have developed, or you kind of used to have it, but we've gotten away from walkable neighborhoods. We've developed, like, you say you did a 15 lot subdivision or 17 or whatever it was. Like, these cluster subdivisions are not walkable. They're just, you have to own a car. And if you want to go get milk and eggs, you got to get in the car and you got to drive several miles down the road to maybe a Cumberland Farms.
Or they always make you put in a sidewalk, and then the main road has no sidewalks. So you have this subdivision road with a sidewalk on either side, and then it goes to
literally pointless,
a gutter,
right?
On the main road.
It's pointless. Yeah, exactly. It's so that's the kind of stuff that I believe we need to really focus on going forward from a bird's eye view of what we both are involved in. Is creating walkable neighborhoods with mixed use. It's horrible even here in New Bedford. I know several developers that would buy mixed use buildings that had storefronts on the first floor, and it's like, well, I'm paying mixed use taxes. I can't get anyone to fill this store or this commercial space, so they just turn them into residential units. So now you're like eliminating that, erasing it, and now it's never going to exist again unless the zoning changes.
That's the thing.
It was grandfathered.
So I grew up in Bridgewater, and all throughout, living in Bridgewater or going back, I live in the town next, one town over, and you go downtown, and okay, there's that building, a new, tanning salon opened up. Yep, it's been 8 months. They're closed.
Gone.
And somebody else is going to, and then, so unless
not
you
barbershops, it seems to be barbershops, churches, and a few other cell phone stores. I mean, that's seems to be the only thing that stays open.
Right.
Other than that,
it's things that you actually need somebody to put their hands on you. Everything else you can buy from Amazon. But to the point is, if you have a small boutique shop downtown. And I have to get in my car and drive 20 minutes and find parking and then go walk over there and go to the boutique, it's not really worth it.
It's not.
So you really need like a good amount of population right there.
Right there.
Like either in the same building or like on the block.
It's the conversation I've had with a lot of local developers here in New Bedford and downtown New Bedford. I would always say it's never going to get better than this until you start building above. Yeah. You go to New York City, you got 10, 20, 30 floors above, and you look at those restaurants and them storefronts, they're full of people. The sidewalks are full of people, and that's the formula to have a synergistic downtown, right? Yeah. And what's occurred zoning wise across the board that's been replicated throughout all the townships and cities in the Northeast is you've restricted zoning so much that you actually deterred that from happening. And the little bit that we have left is even at risk. And I think they're catching on finally.
Yep, they're working on it. Like I said, I just did the Frank's Good Time Lounge there, and he did 6 one-bedroom apartments there. So that's great because now the people that work at the restaurant can live right upstairs.
Right.
Or you're going to have somebody that's there and isn't going to really, you're not going to have, oh, you're keeping my baby up at night because the barroom's too loud.
That
know?
needs to get multiplied like 100 times because
Right.
no one's going to open a grocery store in that neighborhood because there's 6 units. They're going to open a grocery store because there's 600 more units or 300 more units. You need enough people there to sustain the business essentially.
Right.
And again, I'm a big advocate for that. And, you know, that's kind of like the negative side, like the political and regulatory can definitely be a negative, like, part of like projects. How about, like, is there any projects that like you're like proud of, like really they stand out to you that you talk about often?
Yeah, I mean, well, the Hunters Hill one I think is great because, like I said, I worked on that from day one,
Right.
before I even knew what the heck a definitive subdivision plan was. It's like, okay, put these labels on these lines. So, okay, here we go.
Right.
To, you know, I guess it's 20 years later, you know, now I'm, you know, the engineer in charge of the project, and we're out there building houses and everything. That site is actually 140 over 55 houses, and it had its own wastewater treatment plant and has nature trails, and you know that was like a big conservation subdivision.
Yeah, so that's like really master planning essentially because you're not designing just roads, you're designing like the lots, you're trying to get
Yeah,
the
it has a
most
little
out of
community
it.
center like in the middle and everything. So working with Bob and those guys, like that's been really great. He said, "Oh, when we open this community center, you're gonna come over for the cookout." So I'm like, "All right, that's
Yeah,
exciting."
right. So you did there's a clubhouse essentially, or like
Yep,
a
there's a
community
clubhouse, of course, with pickleball and
Gotta have pickleball now,
and a pool out
everything.
back. Yep. But probably the one that makes the most sense to talk about is the Fairhaven Mills project, which is Market Basket over on Coggeshall Street.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal. That was actually a big struggle too, I think, for a lot of years
It was.
to get that off the
A
ground.
lot of different people came in working on that, and
Wasn't Home Depot one of them at some point early?
Yes. Yep.
But they like would just like forget working with New Bedford. This is just too difficult. I remember hearing a lot about like anti-development at that time. Like New Bedford wasn't development friendly.
It was difficult to do work in the city. I have a client that said, if you came to me with a parcel of land in New Bedford and $1 million in a bag,
You still wouldn't do it.
I would be insulted that you gave me land in New Bedford to try and develop, you know, back then.
Back then,
Yeah.
right?
Things are a little bit different now. And then what was able to make that project a little more successful is they had what they called the iPod district. So it was the interim planning overlay district. And same thing. They said, okay, wait a minute. All these people are trying to come into this area along the riverfront and do these projects, and they're just walking away.
Because the zoning that's in place is too restrictive, and it's
Yes.
causing like a lot of conflict at the planning level.
Right. So
essentially.
what they did is they said, okay, in this overlay district, and it basically went from, forget the name of
Coggeshall Street.
a little bit north of Coggeshall Street, where that mill building that's there that got redone.
Shawmut.
Yeah, Shawmut Mills.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. So like a couple blocks north,
Yep.
where you reach this, there's like a sawtooth mill there.
Yep.
Basically from the southerly edge of the park. I forget the park there on Riverside Park, I think.
Yep.
And heading south.
Quite a ways down, they
Right.
did this iPod district. And what it allowed the planning board to do is essentially just waive whatever they thought was applicable
Right.
to get a good project there. So that was with Dickinson Development and Mark White of DW White went in together on that. And so, I mean, talk about a comprehensive project that had, you know, the mill building that was there that needed to come down.
Right.
And of course, that has all sorts of issues with the
Contaminants.
brick and the, you know, the paint and everything else
Right.
in it. We had filled tidelands, you know, there. We had
And that's land that essentially was created by filling in the river. Is that
Right.
what you're saying?
Yep.
Right.
So then, so there's certain requirements with that. Then so then I went kind of the tip of the spear, working on test pits on that site, and I think we did 100 and something test pits, and I analyzed like every layer with a little XRF analyzer gun.
Okay.
And then, one of the other, we used ground penetrating radar throughout the thing to find any underground storage tanks that were there.
Which New Bedford was known for that, you know.
Yeah, it was a big mill, you know, and so there was all sorts of tanks everywhere. And then the other thing that they used to do in New Bedford, and pretty much if you dig a hole anywhere in the city, you'll find a layer of coal ash there.
Okay.
So, because everybody burned coal.
Coal, right.
So you would go and dump it over there somewhere.
Right, exactly.
So there was a lot of stuff there, but what we were able to do was get a beneficial use determination and recycle the brick and everything, basically determine that it wasn't hazardous to the environment to leave it in place.
Right.
So we designed the grocery store to be high enough so that that could stay underneath the parking lot, but far away enough that it wouldn't cause a problem to the public and everything.
So like the Market Basket building and some of the other structures on that property are more like to the west, and then as you get closer to the water, it's just all parking lot, essentially.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
As you lead to the harbor edge.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a building got completely cleaned up, and then under the parking lot where it's filled up a little bit was some of that.
Yeah, that's a huge project. That's great.
That was a great project because, like I said, I went from, doing the research, being on the ground, digging holes in the ground, finding all the content, the tanks and test pits. And then I was creating, presenting the project.
You presented that as well.
I didn't present. I was part of the presentation
probably had an attorney
team
for that. That's a big deal. Probably had like a whole team presenting, right?
We actually didn't have an attorney doing the presentation. We all did it together. We took turns. But my job was I created the PowerPoint and kind of like ran through it and everything. But I was right there with everybody. I helped answer questions because I was the guy that drew all the plans, or part of the team that drew all the plans.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I wasn't the guy, but that was great because we had the new road. Oh, then there was the intersection with the highway. So that was Mass DOT project.
True, yeah, that too.
They were the city at the time was doing a combined sewer overflow redirect around that area.
I think they're still dredging over there too.
Well, that's part of the EPA Superfund site, which I think should be wrapping up soon.
Yeah, they've been doing dredging there for years.
Yep.
How long ago was the Market Basket project? That was like over 10 years ago, wasn't it?
That was in 2008. That was right when everything kind of fell
definitely.
apart.
Yeah,
and that was a good project.
I remember listening to WBSM, and I like just listen to people just like, the city's just not development friendly. We've lost Home Depot, and then we lost this other developer, and then eventually, Mark White, who's from this area, partnered up, you said, with Dickerson. Is that a developer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they collaborated on that, and maybe if it wasn't for Mark White, it probably wouldn't even happen because, just being a local guy, maybe it helps, having more of a drive to get it done, as with someone else, it's just like we'll go to a different state. We don't care because we're a national brand,
right?
Type of thing.
No, but he has an interest in the area. Mark
definitely does.
I don't know if you know Mark, but I
do.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and we were talking about the big dig. It was, they really blew up during that time because where every construction company dropped everything and drove up to Boston for all that big federal money.
Yep.
They stuck around here.
Right?
And they were able to grow with their relationships and everything here locally, and I think it really helped them out.
Yeah, it's great. I have a lot of respect for him. We did a project on Pope's Island. The only reference I could say is the former Foxy Lady building.
Yeah.
We turned that into a plaza for him, like a commercial building, commercial space there. He owns some of those properties on the island, Pope's Island.
I think I worked on that.
You probably did.
Some of the environmental
there
stuff.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's a great guy. He's helped us out with our nonprofit with some things too as well, and he's a very professional.
Yep.
A very good guy to know for sure.
But yeah, that was one of those projects that working on something from the start to finish is what I like, and being involved with every bit of it was good.
Speaking of that, you mentioned the X-rays and all that. How is technology play a part in your business?
A lot. Yeah. I mean, you can start with land surveying. Land surveying is the second oldest. A surveyor will tell you that land surveying is the second oldest profession in the world.
I know what the first one is.
Right. I mean, the guys that built the pyramids, one of those guys was a surveyor.
Yeah, that's true.
Pretty much. So, we went from Akhenaten there with his plumb bob and his string to now we have GPS and drones and all that kind of stuff.
And I'm sure the first profession was around for when he was done with his day too. That's just two very old professions.
Yep. And so we have a lot of that, and then AI. I mean, I had a client ask me about AI, and I tell him it's probably once a month where I go on Google and just start looking up like AI AutoCAD design tools and something, because I know once it breaks out, it's like if you're not using it, you're probably just gonna get blown away. So I'm always. I've
been using it. The second set of questions that I haven't even touched today. I just popped in just like a prompt for it. 20 questions, and it's like 2 seconds. It's done.
I
had to write a partnership agreement recently. I inputted like. It's like it's like Google, right? You're only as good as your search terms.
Yes.
So you have to understand the prompts. You have to kind of get where you're trying to go and give it the right keywords. And a lot of the mundane legwork of writing specifically is handled for you. And that's just writing.
Yeah. So I'll take a letter that I've already written or a proposal or something and say, hey, take a look at this, rewrite it for this person in this town for this scope of work, and it's like done. Like
and
that
you can
fast.
even say write it as this type of a person writing. Like if it's a grant, like write it from the perspective of a grant writer, write it from the perspective of an engineer. And you can
that's why I like to put my own stuff in it first. Okay, like here's an example of what I want it to be.
Right.
But that's always a big thing too, is knowing your audience, whether it's writing a letter or drawing a plan. If I'm working with another or a young engineer, I'll make sure they know, okay, we're going to be drawing this plan because I'm going to the Conservation Commission. So we want to make sure we highlight, the wetlands, their protective zones, and all that kind of stuff. Or if we're going to the planning board, they're going to be more concerned about the roadway entrances and the parking and everything. So, or these are construction drawings.
So you want your your speech punch lists to make sure those are covered. So that way you could even write like your outline essentially to make sure you hit those points in your meeting.
Yeah, or like when somebody looks at it, it's pertinent to what their point of view is.
Right. Yeah, it's great. I mean, like that's literally I've seen that. Like I went to school for, like I said, similar career as yourself, and like I learned technical writing. I learned how to put reports together, and it's like I know I can do it.
Yeah.
If I dedicate a couple hours to it, I can put together a great report, right? But if I can input some bullet points in 5 minutes and it spits it out.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a game changer.
Yep.
I can move on to other things.
Yeah. So that's been helpful. But it's not going to be too far off, I think, where it's going to be like, okay, here's a site plan that I drew. I want a site plan for the next lot. Like, draw it.
I don't see that happening. Because it's going to eliminate your profession essentially.
Not everything, but like you said, same thing. It's like it's not like you don't write anything anymore. But there's still tools that help out.
You're guiding it.
Yeah,
you're guiding it.
Or I was playing around with some of the tools, and I use Civil 3D.
Right.
And usually when you draw a parking lot, you draw the lines and you offset the lines. Okay, there's my parking lot. And there was a tool over on the side, and I was like, "What is this? I've never used it before." And it's like, okay, draw a line around the edge of your parking lot and all the spaces like filled in, and then okay, here's my aisles.
Like an auto calculate of like the division of the spaces and all what's left over.
Yeah, you had to give it the standards that you wanted or whatnot. But so I do. I like to be on top of like making sure I have the latest software and all that kind of stuff, because that's important.
Right. So you're everything. You're wearing all the hats, right? Essentially at this point in time. Yeah. And so you're not only designing, you're not only in the field, or you may not fully be in the field, right? Because you may sub surveying if you're doing the engineering side.
Yeah. Right. I do a little bit of surveying, but not too much.
Right. And then as far as like the billing side, you're handling that as well. So you're your own bookkeeper essentially. Yeah.
So that's where like technology really helps out. So I remember thinking that when I was sitting down by myself in 2020, like, how am I ever going to do this?
Right.
Because, 20 years prior to that, in order to start an engineering firm, you needed, okay, you have the engineer, but then you needed, somebody to pick up the phone. You needed a bookkeeper,
right?
And you needed a drafts person, and then so you needed about 5 people minimum to really like get off the ground, or maybe 3, but
3, right?
But with a lot of the CRM stuff they have and the billing software, every time I get something in, it goes right into there. Okay, pay the bills, and then I track all the time and all the projects. When it's time to bill everything, it's you kind of.
And there's subscriptions to those things too. That's the thing. Like I follow a lot of software companies. Although there's all these great tools, they're getting away from like you just buying the program. Now you own it now. Like they want you to subscribe.
Yeah,
so you start stacking up all those subscriptions.
Right.
It's not cheap to be in business.
Even AutoCAD is that way. You can't buy AutoCAD anymore.
Right.
You have to pay the yearly subscription. So,
right.
Which is kind of a bummer because if you stop paying the subscription and you want to go back and look at the beautiful plan that you drew, it's like I can't even open it.
Can't even open it, right?
But it's good in some ways because it used to be like, okay, this software package costs $10,000 or something, and now you could say, all right, well, instead of doing that, I pay $1,200 a year for that package, and then I always have the most up to date software package,
right?
Versus, wait, I just paid $10,000 this year to buy the software package, and then you want another $3,000 to update it next year? Like, no, I'm just gonna sit on this until I feel like I got my ROI back, and then in another 5 years, I'll pay $10,000
That's exactly what I was doing with QuickBooks for years. I was just, I would sit on the old version for as long as I could.
Right.
Same thing with like Microsoft Office products.
Yep.
All of it. Everything now is subscription. Everything. You start Dropbox, Monday, our phone system, all the stuff, it adds up. And then we have rent, it's crazy. Wow, it's windy out.
It is windy out.
It's very, very windy.
Yeah.
We're right on the water over here. Yeah. There's New Bedford Guide Studios with waterfront view.
Like Microsoft is $15 a month or something like that, instead of having to buy everybody a package. But once you start
emails, and every employee is you're paying for a certain amount of storage for emails.
Right. Once you start scaling your company and you start increasing that, then
the trick is there's like a, what do you call it, like a delta, I think is the right word. Whereas like, all right, if you're like 1 or 2 or 3 people, you want to have all these systems, but the amount of revenue that 2 or 3 people can bring in sometimes doesn't really afford that. So, but once you get over like a delta of like 5, 6, or 10 employees, all right, now you have all these employees helping you bring a lot bigger revenue in. Having those subscriptions really doesn't amount to much. Right. So it's like there's always that kind of like uncomfortable point where you have to kind of maybe make a decision. Hey, we're going to be more manual on some of these things until we get over that point. And I've struggled with that. And it's like, listen, I'm trying not to be cheap. I'm just trying to be like, at the end of the day, we have to make money here. I'd rather keep my employees than keep the software. Right. So it's always around that conversation.
Yeah, and when you're by yourself, there is a delta of like 3 to 5, but when you're just one, it's like you got to have it because it's
too many things. You're doing too many things, right? It's
right. So it's like the more I can automate,
you're going to be the guy that's blowing up and having strokes, like you're saying, like you're hearing those people way back in the day, the business owner that's like going to lose it or whatever. That could be the ugly side, and and there's a sweet side to what you do.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for anyone like younger, like starting out, like in college, or like thinking about kind of going down this path? Like, have any kind of insight?
Yeah.
Now that you're, I can see some grays in your beard there. So
yeah. At least they haven't made it up here too much anyway.
I can't say the same.
The number one thing I tell, and I would tell this to the interns and things, a lot of people get into engineering because they don't like to talk to people. They don't like to be around people. I'm good at math. I want to stay in an office. I want to do calculations. I want to do, just do my thing.
I'm introverted, right?
Yeah, very introverted type of personality. But when it all gets down to it, at the end of the day, it's still about people. Like the plan that you're drawing, the thing that you're designing is going to be used by people that are going to actually construct it. And then once it's done being constructed, there's going to be, the people using the parking lot and everything else.
Right.
Or you're taking kind of your ideas and putting them down on a piece of paper in a way that somebody else can understand.
Right.
And if you don't try and take their perspective in mind when you're doing that, you're going to have bad plans. You're going to have bad reports, even
But you
just calculations.
but you got to, especially in a smaller operation, as far as like, or if you're a project manager in a bigger company, you're gonna have to communicate. Communication is going to be a huge thing. So you can't hide out unless. Would you agree that maybe like a large firm that has hundreds of hundreds of employees,
right.
maybe you can be the engineer that's going to hide out while someone else is the project manager and they're going to deal with the client.
But even so,
you guys still got to deal with your coworkers.
You still have to deal
Right.
with those people too, right?
Right.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, even though you want to just work on your computer and do your thing, and you just I just want to math all day,
Right.
You still gotta be able to communicate those ideas in a way that other people can understand.
Right.
So that's probably the most important thing, I think.
Yeah.
And it's hard at first. I remember when I first started working at Prime, there was a lot of like, okay, call this person and ask them this question. I'd be like, what?
Yeah, you
Call
like tighten up, right? It's like,
Yeah,
what am I going to say? What if they ask me a question I
I'm
don't
gonna
know
say
the
wrong
answer
thing.
to?
Right. Which there's a lot of that. And then, but after you've done your 200th meeting, standing there in front of people, just getting shredded apart by the abutters and everything, it's like none of it really matters. It's you just ask the questions.
Would you agree that 95% of projects that go in front of a zoning or an appeal board, that the abutters don't want it to be approved?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, and that's part of the process too, is, when you're building something, you're in somebody else's community.
Right.
So the way our laws are set up is they get some input at these hearings. So when you apply for it, you have to send them a mailer
notification
and say, hey, we're going to be here, and if you want to speak up, you can. Some of the worst ones.
And they do show up.
Yeah.
And it's usually, I wouldn't say it's 90%, but it's usually in opposition. Sometimes, and I think it's like usually in opposition, and then there's a bigger group of they just want to ask questions, like they're kind of curious, and then there's like the supportive neighbor that's like, yeah, like he's a great neighbor, and I want.
That's usually what happens too. Is if you can get your friends in the neighborhood, if you're part of that neighborhood, then you can get the people there to be in support of you.
Right.
And that's typically at a ZBA hearing, anyways. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's a good idea or a bad idea, but if, a whole mob shows up with torches and pitchforks, they're going to say, no, because we're giving you relief to the rules.
Right.
And that's, all these people feel affected by it. So, but if you can get a group of people that come in and say, hey, you know what, this is a great guy.
Or nobody shows up.
Or nobody, yeah. Then they don't mind sometimes. No, the worst meetings though were back in the day, especially.
Oh yeah, thank you. I want that.
Yeah, in like 2008, some of the worst ones were solar.
Solar, okay.
So I've
like
probably,
solar farms or fields.
Yeah, the solar fields. So I've probably developed 50 to 80 megawatts of solar, or not developed, but worked on projects.
Right.
And basically, the regulations allowed them to be in any zone, including residential zones. So it was good because you have a lot of these areas that don't have sewer, they're on septic, and they're essentially undevelopable parcels.
Right.
That now had a use for it. But then again, you have a neighborhood that used to take the dog for a walk through those woods and everything, and then you come in and clear 20 acres of land
Several
and put
acres.
in solar farm.
Yeah, these like panels.
Right. And then the list of abutters you have to notify is
Huge.
big because it's a big tract of land. So
those are pretty brutal, huh?
those were brutal. I mean, standing room only in the halls, that kind of thing. There was one, and they were worried that the EMF waves from the electricity was going to affect. They read some study that somebody's dog went crazy and was like gnawing their doorknobs off, and she was worried about her dog, or something like that. And then another solar site, in the parking lot, I had an abutter like, you this and you, and he's pointing his
At
finger in
you,
my face, right? I'm like,
Oh boy.
listen, don't point your finger and say you to me, because
Right.
I was hired to do this, you know? And that's the thing you gotta understand too. It's like, I'm helping somebody develop their piece of property and, make it fit in the rules. I'm not here to ruin your life.
It's not personal. It's just business.
Right.
They villainize. You want to maybe villainize you. Yeah, it's
Probably the best one. It was actually for Jason. After the meeting, he said, "I can't believe that just happened." He goes, "I wanted to jump up and start clapping." So there was a solar site, and one of the abutters shows up, and she goes, "Okay, I get what's in it for the town. They're gonna get tax money. I get what's in it for the owner. You're gonna get rich. What's in it for me?" And I was like, and I kind of look around. I go, "There's nothing in it for you." And I just stopped, and I just put my hands in my pocket, and she was like, "What?" I'm like, "Well, we're not here to help. You know what I mean? We're here to permit our project to make sure it works."
right. Exactly.
And, we can work together if you have a concern, but but that one, she was a little belligerent. She was, I kind of had to squash it a little bit. But
We've had similar situations where, like, it's very semi-aggressive, and you're presenting, and or you're when you're sitting down between presentations, and people are grilling you with like the mean mug, and it's like, oh my god, it's like, why? It doesn't have to be like this. But then, like, eventually down the road when the project's done, they see it done, and it's like, they change. It's like, like now they're friendly, and now they
once
they see the vision later. A lot of that comes from anxiety and not knowing what
it is.
Because there's people that just can't, especially consumers, can't visualize a floor plan or a site plan. Like, they have a hard time visualizing. So in that inability to visualize, they don't know if they're approving or getting behind something that's going to be a monstrosity, or that's the word you hear all the time, monstrosity, horrible, but it ends up fine,
Right.
The rules are so restrictive anyways.
Right. And you take it for granted that, especially, doing this for as long as I have and you have, you look at a plan and you just download the whole thing. You understand what's going on, and then, I'll go to a hearing and you put the board up on the easel and you're describing your project. And they're like, "Okay, where's my house? Right there, is that my house?" I'm like, "No, that's just the square that like outlines the label so we can read it. Like, your house is over here."
Over
I'm like,
here.
"Oh," and then you realize, like, okay, they don't see anything on this plan. They just hear, bad man is coming here to build something that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, it's not typical that I just tell people go away. Usually what happens is, people come up, "Okay, am I gonna, is this gonna affect this portion of my property? Am I gonna have water coming onto it, or is my view gonna be ruined?" So a lot of times, said, those are all things that don't necessarily matter with the regulations and what we're here to talk to the board about. But why don't we meet outside afterwards, and we can go over what your concerns might be and see if we can address them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little thing like, "Okay, we'll plant 8 trees along your property line, and we'll that'll do the trick."
Right.
Or, "Okay, we'll put up a fence over here," or whatever. Little things like that.
Figure it out, and usually the developer, the client, will his game. Like, if I can disarm these people, and let's just do it, move it along. We've definitely done that before too. I've definitely been in situations where, we get approval, but then, like, the board will sneak in conditions or try to sneak in, and it's like, whoa. We just had one recently. It was like, well, we're going to approve this, but you can no longer put additions on any building on the property. It's like, no. Like, that's
a lot of those conditions.
Because if there's an addition, it's going to come back to this board anyways. So why even? Like, I can't even do that in the consciousness of my client. Like, can't agree to that.
Right.
But we've seen other municipalities with other conditions that bring in other departments into this, and it's like they don't even have a right to be there. So we got to be careful. Sometimes these boards will kind of put their own little spin on things that are kind of go against the state code.
Right. And you have to understand too that, it's not these board government people. You know, there's not like a group of them that, you know, they switch in and out of these boards. That the board members are just community members.
Exactly.
You know? And they come from work and then they show up at the meeting and they are doing what they feel is the right thing to do.
The right thing, right.
And they're not an attorney and they're not an engineer and they don't study the regs as much as we do, you know? So
that's very true. There is a lot of attorneys on some of these boards, but then there's also like just everyday people that just volunteer their time to be on the board. And it's, you know, it's admirable. I really appreciate it as much as I'm kind of like, I can sound like I'm at opposition because I'm all about what's doing right for everybody.
Yeah.
It's
most
important.
of the time, everybody wants to do the right thing.
Always. Even political. And I don't really discuss politics here, but like, you know, I believe on both sides of the fence, everyone means well. We're all reaching towards the same.
Well, why else do you do things?
Right.
Yeah,
it's just
because
like,
you think it's the right thing to do.
you just think it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And it's like, you know, but so I always try to be open-minded to both sides of everything. So, you know, it's definitely a good place to be. Is there any questions that I didn't ask you that maybe you were like, kind of like, maybe intrigued or like, you know, kind of excited to answer? Like, because I'm not really going along with that script. I'm just kind of flowing.
Fine. That's fine. Like I said, I didn't really study it too much. I just kind of said, oh, I could have this by all that.
Yeah, like about your company, about like, you know, some of the services you offer, you know, kind of like the work you like to kind of type of work you like to be in, like do you prefer anything? It's up to you. It's kind of an open question, you know?
Yeah. No, I really like to work on projects that like are a little more complicated and that have like a little trick to it. You know?
Trick to it, yeah. Challenging projects.
And I like to work with people that kind of already have an understanding of what's going on. Mm-hmm. As much as it's good to help people, you know, okay, I want to put an addition on my house or I need a new septic system or whatnot. I end up finding myself spending a lot of time like describing the process to them.
Right.
Or, you know.
We call it re-educating. It's like every client we have, every house we build, every project we do, we're essentially taking them through construction school.
Yeah.
Every time.
Right. So that's why I like to work with people like you because you guys do that.
We do it. Right. We deal with that part of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you have to go to the client and say, oh, you need to write a check for $800 for this fee. Well, what do you mean? It's my land. Why do I have to pay them for this?
Yeah, it's like, a 15-minute conversation for every dynamic, so I understand.
Right,
and you've said it 100 times already. You know, 1,000 times. Yeah. Right.
So something and I like stuff that again is a little more complicated. You know, there's not too many projects anymore that don't have wetlands. You know, but you know when you go through the regulations, there's always something in there that you can use to make happen. You know,
an interpretation or something like that.
Yeah, but I always in the regulations when you read them, sometimes there's certain things that say you should do this, you shall do that, and then the last one is notwithstanding. So should means you don't have to do it. It's like, well, I should do it, but I'm not going to do it.
I'm not going to do it because there's already enough rules.
Right. Shall means it doesn't matter what you think, you have to do it.
You have to do it, right?
You have to comply with that. And then sometimes you go through a whole section of the regs and you're reading it and you're like, how am I ever going to get any of this approved? And then the next withstanding says,
exceptions.
Notwithstanding the previous section,
right?
You're allowed to do whatever you want so long as you meet these criteria. I'm like, okay,
saving grace.
Yeah. So how do we meet those criteria?
Right.
So those are always kind of fun. You know.
Yeah. I can relate to the challenging. We like the challenging construction projects. We like, you know, the out of the ordinary, which comes with you actually have to put a lot more work in. I don't like, you know, the cookie cutter, do it over and over again. Yeah, that pays the bills, but it's, you know, I'm into this because I have a passion for designing and building. So I can respect that. And yeah, I do like to work with other professionals. Ultimately, the clients pay the bills.
Yep, exactly.
And we're okay with being the quarterback essentially, or maybe the coach in some ways. You know, there's other players on the team, but you know, we like to say early on, okay, we want to build a house. Okay, great. Do you have plans? No. Do you have land? Well, yeah, we're under agreement. Oh, do you have conditions? Do you know if it's even get a building permit? Well, maybe you should, you know, work with us to help you write conditions. And then also, You know, here's some engineers we work with. You know, you should engage them now, not when you're trying to get lending from the bank to design a house, design a site, and get pricing. You know,
the thing that I see a lot of times is somebody has a parcel of land, and then they kind of flip through some books, and they're like, "Oh, this is my dream house," you know, and they're like, so then they have all this stuff picked out, and then they'll come to me and say, "Okay, here's my house, put it on this land." Like, okay, so your lot, you know, slopes 15 feet from one side to the other, and you are picking out a ranch that's 80 feet long.
That's going to sit flat.
That's going to be flat. And you're saying that you don't want to have a basement or whatnot. I was like, you know, this house really doesn't fit right on that lot.
Right.
You know, we should have, here's the lot you have that, and, you know, finding land is probably the hardest part. So once you have that, you want to design the house around that.
To the lot, right.
Yeah. So that's where I come in, like, with architects and stuff.
That's actually a perfect point, because that's exactly where, like, if the lot's flat and the house design is basic, and we can work with the client to design the house, because we know it's going to sit as long as it's like width and length and all that. Right. But when we get topography and slopes and things like that, we have to start collaborating much earlier. Here's the concept. We can do a walkout here. Where should we put retaining walls? And we start to work with the site,
right?
You know, design. Yeah,
and
early.
that, like I said, my plan just shows a blank box where the building is. But at some, there is a point where your world and my world collide.
In those, specifically in those situations, definitely.
And it really gets tricky. You know, single family house is one thing, but it gets tricky if you have like a 50,000 square foot pad building. You know? And the floor is totally flat across the whole thing. So, and then we have entrances and exits. You know, how are we going to make all that work?
How to make that work without spending all kinds of money on retaining walls and you know, site features and different things like that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, the haircut looks great. I know you said I'm getting a haircut the day before. And
yeah, no, I told her don't go too crazy. I just kind of clear it up.
By the way, thank you for the mug.
Yeah, very good.
And the knife. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is
I
great.
don't know how sharp it is. It's probably made in Taiwan.
No, this is great. You gave me an awesome idea too. I wanted to.
The thing that I was missing was I like to give, especially all my builder clients, a scale. An engineer scale.
Oh, perfect. To have in the truck or whatever.
Right, because what always happens is I give them the plan, and then they have a question, and I show up on site, and they have their plan on their phone, and they're like, I'm like, what are you doing with that? You know? Or they call me, it's like, hey, what's the distance from this to that? I'm like, how about you take the plan that I gave you,
right?
Pull out a scale,
and
measure it, because, you know. So I kind of like give my guys a hard time a lot of times. Like, here's a scale. Look, it even has my logo on it and my phone number. If you really have a question, you can call me. But before you call me,
that's a great idea. I like that.
Try and figure that out.
Right.
I was like you said, you spend a lot of time working on these plans.
This is awesome.
You want to be able to
can never have enough knives.
And knives are good too. Yeah, I like knives too.
That's a great touch. Yeah. This is a question actually I got this morning, so you're not going to be ready for this one, but I know you're going to have a great answer. Yeah. What's something you wish you had known when you first started your career, like, you know, that you kind of learned later, you know?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know.
Nah.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, I've never worked harder than I did, you know, when I opened my firm, for sure.
Right.
You know, it's a lot of work.
Gotcha.
It's pretty much like,
would you say that even like just the idea of being on your own would be something that you never thought of, like when your career technically started right after college or during college essentially? Yeah. So like when you were doing that, you're like, I'm just trying to like get a good job and make a living or whatever. So that probably could have been something like I didn't even never pictured working for myself.
Right.
You know, having my own.
Like I said, I was really like the one that was holding me back. You know, I was the one that everybody else was telling me like,
we are
this
always
is a good
the
idea.
ones holding ourselves back. It's always like that.
And then I realized like everybody around me is telling me that I'm doing a good thing here, and maybe I should listen. You know, instead of being the one that's holding myself back. You know?
I can tell just like talking to you, like very genuine. Like I can tell you're really into what you do. Yeah. You know, it's clear in the conversation, and I mean, for you to go out on your own, that says a lot too, because you know, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to know all sides of your business to do it by yourself.
Right.
I did it. Like I went and measured. I did existing conditions. I did, concept design. Now at this point where I don't even, it feels weird, but it's like I'm just doing like owner stuff. Like I'm doing like, like just making sure different parts of the system are working. Like I'm not even really sometimes I'm not even a builder. I'm just a business owner.
Right.
So it's like I could apply those techniques to almost any business now. Like
yes.
once you get to like, so
exactly. That's a little bit different. Yep. So what I do like being by myself is I still get to, do the hands-on. I still get to like actually do stuff,
less mistakes too. Because when you have other people, you kind of let the reins to other people, and it's like people make mistakes, and sometimes they don't even the younger folks they haven't bumped their heads yet. So it's like you almost revisit things that you made a mistake years ago.
That's
again.
The thing. That's how you really grow. Is but Dad would always say, he'd be like, it's okay to make a mistake as long as you learn from your mistake.
Of course, exactly.
And I like to take it one step further. It's like if you can observe somebody else's mistake and learn from it, that's even better.
Yeah, even better. Like I've had some really important people in my life, and great mentors, and I've also had people that they love me and they want the best for me, but also said like, listen, like there's some people put in your life to know what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes you got to pay attention to what others are doing wrong. And back to how we started this conversation, I learned that stuff early,
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I'd never thought when I was 17 on the railroad, pounding beam poles into the ground or whatever, that I'd be, standing before the Brockton Planning Board or, whoever, and, presenting, some pretty decent projects.
Right. No, I could I mean, you definitely have a great, track record and like a lot of experience, and,
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is maybe that's the one thing that I wish I knew, is that, I always say it's like, oh, people tell me I do a good job because I just can't believe it. Sometimes I can't believe it. It's
that's good because it means you're humble, but it's okay to sit back sometimes and be like, I'm proud of myself for what I did, but not in a conceited way. You're confident now because you've earned your stripes essentially.
Yeah.
So
and I find that now, like if I talk to people, different, you talk to a lot of different people, like I said, so. Then you come to realize, like, oh, there aren't really a whole lot of people that have, this knowledge of this, from regulations all the way up to being an expert at Civil 3D, or being able to understand how, like, the GPS technology works.
All the different jurisdictions that have authors, authority. That's. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I look forward. I'm so happy you came today.
Yeah,
it
was fun.
I look forward to helping you and with your career, with project. You're definitely somebody I want to work with going forward more.
Yes.
We had one project we worked on. It hasn't got off the ground.
Yep.
But I haven't given up on that. I think that it may turn into something down the road. But that's our industry. It's like it's not like things happen in a week. It's like months, years before projects get off the ground.
Yeah.
You've probably been along for projects for 5+ years in some cases. That Market Basket project was, like that was a big deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Several years to get that off the ground. How can people find you? You do the social media thing, Facebook, Instagram,
I don't do too
or
much of
anything?
that.
Website?
No, I do have a website. It's www.w-civil.com.
w-civil.com.
And,
okay.
And I intentionally made it just very simple. It's just one page, and it says who I am and what I do. And believe it or not, people call. Anytime somebody calls me, I'm like, oh, how'd you find me? They said, oh, I Googled civil engineer, and your name came up, found your website, and there you go.
Awesome.
And I also I worked very hard to try and get a very short URL,
Right. That's right. I went from a very long one.
Yes.
Years ago, it was like southcoastarchitecture.com. a
Which
lot.
was fine
Now I'm
when you
SCA
just click on it at your computer, but now everybody's using their mobile device, and
Right.
to type that in is brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal. we live and learn. So for sure, keep it simple for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's anything I can help you out with in the future, and I really appreciate taking time every day, because I know you got work to do, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So,
actually, I'm gonna after this, I'm gonna jump in my car and head out to Hunters Hill with my GPS and put some flags up on some limited clearing. So
gotcha. There you go. So see, there you go. I knew you came in with a case. So
yeah, I got my work boots on.
Yeah. Are you ready? You got. It's right. You got to keep them in the car for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing is, my wife is always bothering me, like, why you got these shoes and those shoes? It's like, well, because I had to go to, the construction site and
of
put my
course.
boots on. And then when I got back to my office, my shoes were muddy, so I put those shoes on. And then when I got home, they all just kind of ended up on the floor.
You can stomp around the office like one of my project managers with his muddy boots around the office. Is like, oh, Tony's here.
Oh, he's that guy.
You can follow the mud,
right.
but he likes to vacuum, so that's good.
Okay, perfect.
He doesn't
yeah.
mind.
You gotta get a
so.
Roomba. I got a Roomba in my
Oh
office,
yeah. Well, my son Christian has one, and I was like, you paid $1,000 for that thing? He's like, $1,000. I'm like, well, it used to be $1,000 when it first came out, but I think they're more reasonable now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Technology. Yeah.
But thank you, Evan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
No
Really
problem.
appreciate it. I
you
think
got
you got
it.
a good thing going on here. So
Thank you.
looking
Yeah,
forward to
I
more
mean,
episodes.
passionate about it, and I look forward to keep doing more. And you're welcome back too, as well.
All right,
so,
good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely have one of these for you for
send me
sure.
a cup.
Maybe a knife too. Thank you.
All right, perfect.